I believe we are now live on Facebook and on YouTube. Success. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. Hopefully it's a sunny afternoon where you are, and thank you for taking the time to join us here on our Incubeta Ignite first ever live stream. And what a superb subject this is for us to be covering today and this week. This week is obviously Mental Health Awareness Week, and the subject that we're all focusing on is kindness. We'd love to have a discussion today with our friend Craig Fearn from Business Mental Wellbeing to really share with you our learnings, and Craig specifically his learnings about business mental wellbeing and wellbeing in the workplace. So thank you, Craig, for taking the time to join us today. We're delighted to be working with you at Incubeta to support our people and our friends in Incubeta at this time, but all the time, to improve and have sustainable mental well-being. So delighted to have you with us, Craig. You're the CEO of Business Mental Wellbeing. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to kick off with you giving me a little bit of an intro. But before we do, for those of you who have joined us successfully on Facebook and on YouTube, we'd love for you to engage. So please do join us. Please put your comments down below, or on this side or this side, wherever they appear on Facebook. We'd love to see your comments. We can see them in front of us, and we will try and pick those up, and we'll try and answer any questions that you do submit at the end. And those who are unable to answer, we will follow up on, and Craig has offered his ongoing support there. So thanks very much, Craig. No, so without further ado, Craig, we're going to keep it nice and short, nice and sweet. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe we'll run over, and that's okay. It'll be a sign of a good conversation. So, Craig, we've been talking for, let's say, more or less a year. We've been in different locations, yet we're both now in Cornwall. So obviously COVID has changed our whereabouts, and somewhat for the better, because we both love the home nation, or home county, should we say. But I know you for having 15 years experience and 15 years as a mental wellbeing consultant, and a very good mental wellbeing consultant by all accounts. You've recently been nominated for Best Mental Wellbeing, Mental Health Consultant in the UK. So we're in good hands, and I'm really looking forward to learning more from you about how people can be coping at this time and ongoing as well. So again, great to be working with you. And without further ado, Craig, would you kindly share a little bit of your experience? Tell us who you are, your experience about business mental wellbeing, and what your purpose and mission is for the business.
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing this for about 15 years now. I personally have suffered from mental ill health since about the age of 12. So I went through secondary school, and since that point forward, my sort of first early working career, unfortunately, I had to leave due to a medical condition, and I then spent about 18 months in isolation, so self-isolating at home. I distanced myself from family and friends. At the time, my best mate was a pizza delivery guy who used to drop one off every day, that kept me going. Although I never met him, I used to sellotape the money to the door. So, but I'm sure he was lovely.
Are you ever tempted to go back and find out who that pizza delivery guy was?
I never did. I wish I had. He always used to make a good tip out of me as well every week. So maybe that was the key to it. But I really had my struggles in that sort of 18-month period. I went through sort of the NHS treatment for mental health. So I went down the counselling routes, and I was going in and going through my sort of daily counselling, coming home and finding that actually I wasn't really getting much from it, just on a personal note. So it got worse, because I was then sort of, it was my fault. It wasn't working for me. It was working for everybody else, because the NHS fixes everyone, but it wasn't working for me. So during that 18 months, I attempted suicide twice, and things got pretty bleak. But it came to a point where I actually sort of, it was either had to start doing something again, or, you know, actually this really was the end of the line. And my partner, who's now my wife, she basically said to me, look, you know, you've got to come back into this. You're not worthless. You're not pointless. So I then started going back to my NHS counselling sessions with a completely different idea on them. So what I was doing was I was taking what they were giving me. I was going away. I was keeping the bits that I liked and worked for me. And then I was replacing the other bits with bits that I was going out and working out for myself. So, you know, this was the approach that I then took to mental health from that point forward. So it was very much a collaborative experience when I'm working with people and companies. And it's not about that one size fits all scenario. It's about actually working out what works best for that individual and allowing them to then sort of walk away with that toolkit, if you want, to live their life and take back control of their life rather than becoming reliant on somebody like me. So Business Mental Wellbeing was set up off the back of another company called Lighthouse Mentoring, where I deal mainly with students and private clients. And I kind of felt at the time that business maybe wasn't not taking this as seriously as they should, but actually working out the right ways of dealing with this. You know, lots of rhetoric was going around. Lots of people were saying this is the right way to do it. This isn't the right way to do it. But again, like a person, every business is different, and every business requires a different way of working.
And how many years ago was that, Craig, when you first how many years ago was it when you first set out and you had that observation?
So when I first, so this was about 7-8 years ago, when I first started sort of really trying to influence the business market, and actually sort of saying, you know what, this can work for you guys as well. And, you know, we need to work out, every business is different, every sector is different, but all your employees are different as well. There are lots of really nice blanket approaches you can put out there, but actually sometimes you need to have somebody around who can deal with the individuals as individuals and deal with the businesses as individual businesses. So, you know, that was about 7-8 years ago. I had lots and lots of conversations with lots and lots of different people. Some were fun, some weren't fun. Some were just as much as sort of, you know, thanks very much, but no thanks. We're not interested. We've gone through that sort of rhetoric within business now, where we understand, or are getting a better understanding of, just how important well-being, and especially mental well-being, is in the business community. You know, we've even had big companies like Deloitte putting figures on just how big these things are. So from a purely money-based situation, the latest figures that I read, Deloitte said that absenteeism for mental health costs the UK economy 14 billion a year. Sorry, 6 billion. Then we've got staff turnover, which is 6 billion a year based on mental health. So not feeling valued by your company or things on those sorts of lines. And then the cost of retraining and bringing in a new member of staff. And then we've got presenteeism, which is the kind of new kid on the block who's always been there, but nobody's really actually acknowledged. That works out at sort of 22 billion pounds a year. So if you add them all together, you're talking a huge amount of money out of the UK economy. And of course, you know, that is the sort of argument that business does listen to when you can start throwing around figures that are that sort of huge. Business Mental Wellbeing was set up to actually specifically target presenteeism. So
presenteeism, right?
Presenteeism, yeah. So presenteeism, for anyone who's not come across it, is effectively turning up to work with a mental health issue. That means that you're not as productive while you're in the workplace. And that can then knock onto your colleagues and the business itself. So if you're coming in and there's, you're really struggling with your mental health and you're just staring at your screen and you're not really doing much of what you're doing, your colleagues then have to pick that up. And if your colleagues are picking that up, of course, you then get the next level, which is colleagues sort of, well, hang on a minute, what's going on? And because mental health is a hidden impairment, we can't see it unless people are actually talking about it. So we don't actually understand what it is that's going on behind the scenes for that individual. Nobody comes to work to be not there. We go for a reason, and that's to be productive. So I set up the business to actually target presenteeism. Now, I came up with an analogy for this, which relates to a bucket, which seems apt for the shed, to be honest. So effectively, if you can imagine a bucket, so that bucket is a person. And all day, every day, you've got water that's dripping into that bucket from a tap, and that's stress, and that's anxiety, and that's sort of mental health. And it keeps drip, drip, drip. And then suddenly something will come along that's really, really sort of stressful or gets to you, and it's like someone turning that tap right on, flooding that bucket, water level rises.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the gym and you're eating healthily and you're sleeping properly and you're doing the things that we know will help, you're bailing water out of that bucket with a cup. So you're taking it out. But eventually what happens is that water level will continue to rise until it gets to just below the lip of the bucket. Now, traditionally, business waits for the water to get just below the lip of the bucket, and then they go, oh, hang on, there's a problem here. We need to do something about this. So they come along and they drill a hole in the side of the bucket just below the lip of the bucket. So it's draining water out the side, but actually it only takes that little to actually go over the bottom.
Yeah.
So Business Mental Wellbeing was set up to drill the hole in the bottom of the bucket. So actually that water is draining constantly all the time. So it doesn't reach that higher level. So that was the sort of concept behind putting us together in the first place. So if you target the problem before it becomes a massive problem, or you target the issue before it gets out of control, you've got a much better chance of dealing with it in a productive way than actually going through those sorts of issues. So that was the thinking behind Business Mental Wellbeing, and certainly the personal journey for me to actually sort of take that negative experience. But I think from my point of view, it allows me to, I always say that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And for me, I can look at this from an empathetic point of view. I've lived it, rather than what people with mental health traditionally don't want, which is a sympathetic point of view. We don't need that, oh, poor you. What we need is, look, I understand that there's an issue. How can we address this?
Craig, could you just repeat that phrase again?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Everyone got that. Maybe we can put that in a banner at the bottom as well, just as you repeat it.
So for me, it's very much, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
So when you're walking in for the first time to see somebody regarding your mental health, or you're thinking to yourself, should I go and talk to somebody about my mental health? There are lots of different places you can go, lots of different people who have lots of different qualifications and letters and things after their name that look really impressive on paper. But for me, it was always about, does this person actually care about me, or do they care about a number that they need to get off that list? So, when dealing with individuals and dealing with companies, I care passionately about every company and individual I work with, because ultimately, I suppose I'm one of the few businesses that's actually out there to do myself out of business. And the idea is that, if we do this right and we put you in a position to rely on yourself, you don't need me, and then you can move on and do what you need to do. rather than me sort of hanging around there and you constantly coming back. Sure, come back, let's have a chat, let's, check in. If there's an issue, we'll deal with it. But I want to give the power back to you guys as a business, or to the individuals, to actually strive forward and continue to get better, rather than me just sitting and waiting for things to happen. So, I care about who I work with, and I'm pretty picky about it as well, because I like people who have the same attitude as I do.
Good. Well, we're delighted to be part of the group that you've picked. And staying on this topic, what results have you seen be demonstrated when somebody does then know how much you care as a business or as a manager for them?
Sure.
What difference does it make?
So when you look at a business as a culture, and people say culture in business an awful lot. There's a culture of this and a culture of that. We don't do this well and we don't do that well. People don't normally start with the positives that they do well and then work backwards from that point. They start from the worst bits, and then you're on the back foot immediately because your mind is in that really negative way of looking at it. So when I'm going into businesses and sort of I'm looking to influence the culture of that business. So I'm looking to influence how people view themselves as individuals within the business and how they view the business as a whole. So, a lot of the biggest success stories have been where there have been sort of huge staff turnover issues, or there have been lack of awareness or things along those sorts of lines. But the ones that for me are the best ones are the ones where the company sort of goes, we know and we want to help, we just don't know how, because we deal with computing, or we deal with, we're not experts in this field, and the best sort of cases for me are when people actually identify that, if I wanted somebody to fix my leg, I broke my leg, I would not go to my HR department or whatever the case might be and say, I've got a broken leg. Or my line manager or whatever the case might be, can you please set my leg and put it in a cast and whatever, these types of things. So it's the actual sort of...
It sounds crazy when you put it that way, doesn't it? When you put it in a physical example.
We look very much at the sort of mental and physical aspects of health within a business, because obviously businesses, we're looking for them to be the best places they can be for people to come and work. And physical health is clearly part of that. We don't want people marching around and getting electric shocks off of bare wires. And if somebody does have a physical injury, then we have somebody at hand who can sort of go in and provide very basic support. Mental health in itself is in there as well. And we have mental health first aiders. And, I've had the pleasure of working with the guys that you've got over the last few weeks, who are doing an amazing job at actually sort of trying to understand the nature of what's in front of them and direct that culture change. And it can't be understated, the fact that they're going out there, they're putting themselves out on a limb to make a difference by saying, come and talk to me. And this is a huge thing to do. People actually saying to you, if you've got an issue, come and talk to me, and actually meaning it. Yeah. Because a lot of the time we hear people saying, oh yeah, if there's any problems, just come back to me and it's fine. And full well that in the back of your head, what you've got is somebody saying, yeah, right, whatever. Every time I've spoken to the guys that you've got, I am in no doubt that they genuinely mean what they say, and they're genuinely they're making that difference. And that's why they're a great team for me to get involved with, because they are so keen to change and improve by being positive moving forward rather than negative looking backwards. So it's very easy to point the finger and say, we've never been like this, or we've never done it this way. but to actually take the reins and say, well, okay, we never have, but why shouldn't we? So let's do it.
Yeah.
It's something that, you know, I think takes a brave business culture to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the focus this week is, of course, kindness, and kindness matters. And no more is that demonstrated by those individuals on the mental health committee and the kindness that they're offering to those people who need it when they need it. So, yeah, grateful for those people, and grateful for you working with them.
Oh, they really are great.
Very good, and they're watching. So thanks to
I wasn't told that. No, not at all. They are phenomenal.
Yeah, they really are. I can see a couple of them smiling behind the scenes here on the software we're using. So very good. So Craig, that bucket has water pouring in at various rates, and certain events happening, change events happening, no doubt increases or decreases the flow of water into that bucket. We're clearly going through a time of significant change, and it's affecting people in very different and individual ways. What impact are you seeing as a result of the last couple of months in onset of as a result of COVID? How are you seeing people cope with it, and what support can you offer, or what advice can you give to people to help them support themselves, their friends, their family, their colleagues?
Sure. So at the moment, I'm looking at society and the companies that I'm working with, and there seems to be a general trend that for, maybe the first 3 weeks, everyone was sort of, okay, it's 3 weeks, we can deal with this. And then we've gone through the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, and everyone's sort of, okay, I'm not feeling as bad as I thought I would be at this point. However, now that we've had the next tranche being put in place, all of a sudden we're now starting to get people saying, hang on, no, we've gone far enough. And, what we are getting, I was talking to some of your guys about the concept of isolation. And immediately, people think isolation, we lock ourselves away and we don't talk to anyone, and that's the way isolation works. And actually, we're doing this now in the pandemic. We're isolating. From a mental health point of view, isolation is much more encompassing. So, if we are isolating, we still have ways of reaching out. But if we are self-isolating from our own sort of mental health side of things, just in the same way that I did, you start cutting down your contact with people who matter to you. You start cutting down the amount of time that you spend doing things that you enjoy, because actually there's that concept that you don't deserve it. Right. Or you shouldn't be doing this, or why, what's the point? I may as well just, and again, your whole sort of life contracts and becomes very much about this very small, confined space that you're in, and you're not quite sure how to deal with this.
Yeah.
I think the big things to bear in mind, and again, I go back to sort of some of the sort of more common interventions that are out there. So the reaching out of people to you makes you feel good. And the reaching out of people to you, not work related. So if my boss rings me up and goes, you're right, mate, how are things? And you're like, whoa, immediately you would go through that stage of, well, hang on a minute, this isn't about work. Why are you ringing me? This isn't work. But actually, the longer that conversation goes on, and the more that individual's just trying to find out about you, how you are. And remember, you know these people because you've been working with them, you've been at desks with them. That actual sort of Zoom contact, that face-to-face, virtual face-to-face, is massively important, because, people then start to remember there's more outside of that sort of initial bubble.
Yeah.
Certainly from a business point of view, I recommend it to everyone that I'm working with that these are sort of once a week check-ins, just to find out how somebody is.
Yeah.
it's also nice to be able to feel part of that community. And once you know that one person's interested, then it's easier to approach the next person and speak to the next person. And, you know, if you're doing sort of quizzes during your day, or, you know, I wrote a music quiz for a company that I was working with the other day, and they played it on their internal radio station-y type thing, listening out for various songs, being part of what's going on. Again, I think structure cannot be overstated as being important. I think an awful lot of what seems to be happening.
Is that structure as a business, or is that structure as an individual? You know, structure to your day, keeping a routine.
So I think there seems to be this, to a certain amount of people, they're going, I'm working from home. I don't want somebody to think that I'm taking the mickey, and this is presenteeism. So I'm going to work twice as hard for twice as long. And, you know, that's what I need to do. Because that way, Joe isn't going to come along and say, hang on a minute, you know, you've not been as productive as you would have been in work. So working from home clearly isn't the sort of, it's actually realizing that you can structure your own day around all these other things. So if your company's got things going on, you don't have to be on everything. If it's outside of that working time. If it's inside of the working time and it's stipulated, then clearly, you know, that's part of your job. But if there's stuff going on outside, you don't have to be on everything just to say that you've been on it. If you want to go and sit in the garden, go and sit in the garden. Don't feel obliged that you constantly have to engage with absolutely everything. Engage with what you want to engage with. You know, good employers are not looking to sort of intrude on the entirety of your life. What they're looking to do is provide you with ways of interacting that they feel would be beneficial for you at that particular moment in time. Just like if the guys went out for a beer after work, you don't have to go to the pub. You could decide actually I'm going to go home. But because of all this, we kind of feel more that we have to, and that actually, you know, oh, well, if everybody else is going and I'm not there, then they're going to think that I'm not. Whereas when we're going home, it's okay because we're going, well, I live 10 miles away and actually, you know, it's a bit of a tube ride or whatever the case might be. So I think that certainly from a personal point of view at home, you know, get that structure to your day. Be making sure that you're waking up at a decent time. Do your work, not 10 times your work, not, you know, just, you know what your work is, you know what the score is, you're the professional who's doing that particular thing, and have faith in your company to actually realize that this is an unprecedented time and we're not out there to sort of beat people with a stick. We're trying to work with you. But from the company's point of view, in terms of structure and what they're providing, it's actually sort of being available. And, you know, I think a couple of things that I've had people do is actually have somebody senior position within the company send out a newsletter once a week, once a day, whatever the case might be, cutting down on the amount of noise and chatter and rubbish that's out there. Because we all know what it's like. You're on a computer and your Facebook pops up and whatever else, and you hear that, you know, a London bus was found on the moon. You're like, whoa, hang on, what's all this sort of stuff? Or COVID is sort of coming down from Mars, or whatever these things are. So actually having that ability to just say, I'm going to park all that. I've got one source of X, and this is what I need to know about to do my job and to be where I am. So, you know, I think that's structure in one and the structure in the other.
Craig, there's a certain irony in this next question, which it relates to, we're spending so much time now on our screens in front of the cameras, and, you know, actually it's nice to turn the camera off sometime and just have a good old phone conversation. But how important is it for people to get time away from screens, both laptop, TV, mobile, and so on? And what simple, easy advice can you give to people? Perhaps some tips that are different to the things that we're kind of commonly hearing.
Sure. So time away from screen is really important right now. Time away from social media is probably far more important than time away from screen.
Right.
I always bang on about this, and well before all of this. So for me, when my bedroom is where I go to sleep. So my mobile phone does not go to my bedroom at all, ever. In fact, I've got a little phone safe downstairs next to the phone, and myself and my wife, we take our phones and we put them in the safe, and then we leave them there. And when we get up again the following morning, we come downstairs and we can get our mobile phones out the safe. But until then, the safe is locked. Now, all right, there's an override password in case something went absolutely crazy or whatever it might be. But the point for me is it never has. We've all got landlines, whether we like it or not, most of the time, if we want broadband. So if somebody really needs, they've got my home phone number, they can ring the old-fashioned way. For me, actually getting that phone and putting it away is massively important. It goes on do not disturb. It doesn't flash, it doesn't ring. It's not that I'm sat there thinking, oh, I can't sleep, and then you hear that little ping and you're like, oh God, maybe there's something really interesting that somebody's posted, I'd better quickly check. And then you check it and you find out actually it's just somebody who's posted a picture of their hamster eating a bit of apple or something ridiculous. But of course now you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or other social media brands. You've got to have a look at everything else because there might be something else that's really useful in there. So actually taking that time away from screen, if you're there with your family, it's massively important to keep connected with them. If you're walking around the whole time with a mobile phone in front of your face, it's not conducive to, we are able to take some of this family time back that, we have lost. Also coming away from the screen sort of prevents you sort of going into I'll just do a bit more work, or I'll just do this next thing, or I'll just do this next thing and just see where it ends up. So screen time, away from screen time, make sure that you're taking your exercise time. It's really important to get out there in the sunlight while we've got it, because it doesn't happen that often.
We've been very lucky that we are in this situation at this time of year. We count our silver linings, and this is definitely one of them.
Massively. So get that sunlight, get that vitamin D into you, get that positivity of being able to walk around and do this. When I go for my walks, I leave my phone at home because I'm going on a walk and I want to go out and I want to enjoy and I want to listen to what's going on. There are mindfulness principles in there where we're just listening to our environment and appreciating exactly what we have. Because wherever we are in the UK, we are in this position where we are more appreciative now of what's on our doorstep than we probably were before lockdown started. Because we can walk past it and we've got that quiet and whatever takes place. So I leave my phone at home. I don't take my phone on my exercise walks and things like that. I know people relax by gaming. Yep. Again, I if used correctly and in moderation, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. That concept of escapism and sort of getting on there and being somebody else in a different scenario, in a different world, can be really, really positive, which, you probably won't hear very many people jumping up and down and saying, get on a computer game.
Craig, what is it that's behind that? You spoke about escapism there. Is it simply the benefit of doing something different, of breaking up your day, of disconnecting from the work that perhaps preceded it or so on?
There are a couple of things that play in. So the concept of escapism is just not being you. So in actuality, at the moment, you is in a location in the middle of a lockdown during a pandemic or a shed. But when you're on that game, you're an avatar who is running around blowing up whatever, or whatever your taste in games might be. You also have something involved called the flow state. Now, the flow state is something really important to humans and human minds. And that's that ability just to switch off everything and just live in that moment for that period. So we've all started doing something, and then you looked at the watch, and then you're doing it, and then you kind of look back at the watch and 4 hours have gone or whatever, and you're like, hang on, where did that go? Because we've been so in that moment in what we're doing. So the key to this is the moderation. What I'm not suggesting you do is jump on your games console or your PC and play FIFA or whatever for 19, 20, 24 hours a day. But actually, as part of my day, I have a slot of time that I have allotted for me to go and play computer games if I want to go and play a computer game. Or, that's my free time. That's my, if I want to go and read a book, I'll go and read a book. I'm not regimented in, I'm going to use this approach at this time every day, because how I'm feeling will change every day. So, maybe I want to blow something up today. I'd better go and play a computer game, or, I want to go and immerse myself in this book that I'm really enjoying, and whatever the case might be. So it's kind of what I mean about structure and being able to manage your time effectively. But effectively for you in the best way that you know how.
Yeah. It sounds, you spoke about being present, or the concept of being present. And certainly, we're seeing the people being more present with their families, with their friends, with reading books, whatever it might be, going out for a walk. You see that in the photos that are being shared of flowers at this time of year. How do you feel the UK is responding? How do you think we've coped with this situation of quite significant and sudden change?
It's a really difficult question, because I think obviously we are all different, and just in terms of our ability to cope with things, our lifestyles, our way of living, where we live, how we live, who we live with. It's a huge plethora of lots and lots of different stuff. There will always be people that are coping okay. There will always be people who are not coping okay, whether that be pre-COVID or post-COVID. I think the UK on the whole is doing the best that we can with what we've got. And I think that's all we can expect anyone to do. But in turn, that means if you are not doing okay, that's okay as well. And that's when you're reaching out and you're speaking to people and you're engaging with help, and that support can be put there for you. So, for me, there's no point in looking around a room at 20 people and saying, well, I'm the one that's struggling. We don't actually know. I don't know what's going on in your life. I'm assuming that your life is okay and everything's great, because you're not telling me anything else. But actually, I can't be there 120% saying absolutely everything is okay with you. But what I am doing is making that judgment that you're better off than I am. So, rather than comparing ourselves to other people, what I advocate strongly is actually just being honest with ourselves about us. So it doesn't matter who else is coping well, or if your mum's doing well with this or whatever else. In terms of that initial reaction, obviously we want our family and everybody to doing as well as they can. But that initial sort of, well, he's doing all right, so I should be doing all right, is kind of, we've started to leave this behind in mental health, full stop. There's a long way to go. And this is one of the sort of more difficult things for people to actually come forward on, when they're looking around a room, or they're looking around a webinar, or they're looking around a Facebook chat, or whatever the case might be, and they're going, well, they seem all right, because they're not breaking down in tears and telling everyone about how rubbish everything is. Well, we don't know. And that's what certainly your guys that I've been working with, they're there to find that out. They're there to be the person that you can speak to. And then they're there to sort of work out how best to deal with it and where to refer it. So, as a nation, we're doing the best that we can, and that's all anyone can ever expect of you.
Yep, absolutely. Craig, I'm going to ask you final question about what literature you would recommend, but I'm going to give you a second to think about that, and ask everybody who is watching this to pop down to the comments if they're here or here or below, and just type in a comment that of a book that you've read that you would recommend to other people, or something that you have done that has been kind to yourself, whether that be bake a loaf or go for a walk, or whatever it might be. Just pop a comment in there, and as Craig tells us what literature he would recommend, let's start to see those comments coming in, and we'll put some of those up on the screen. So Craig, what literature would you recommend for people?
It's an interesting question. A lot of the stuff that I tend to read is put out by a lot of the very large charities. So Mind has some fantastic resources, but they also have some really nice stories about individuals who have come forward and share their experiences. And I think that's being able to sort of understand that we're not on our own, and that people are actually out there putting these types of things forward, always makes me feel so much better that I'm reading this story. And you know what? Not all of the stories are sort of what I would call your X Factor moment, where all this stuff happened and then it turned out absolutely wonderful, and now I'm singing for Simon Cowell or whatever the case might be. You don't want to be singing.
You don't want to be singing that.
But it's really, really important to me to actually sort of be listening to what's going on and keeping abreast of a lot of the stories that are out there. I tend to blog quite a lot, so quite clearly I'd recommend my own blog for people to read. But I think the good thing about blogging and talking to people in that manner is that, again, blogging can be very honest, and when people start writing in that respect, that's when I really take notice, because I like the raw stuff. I like actually sort of listening and learning from people who put themselves out there, and that's why I go that way more than sort of books and literature. Books and literature are great for mental health, in terms of just general literature and just going and reading something just because you want to read it, and whether that's something trashy or whether that's a huge, great undertaking that you always thought that you could never do. Just having that space to read is really, really great.
Absolutely. We've had a couple of recommendations come in. The Alchemist was one, and Factfulness, which is one that I can absolutely vouch for, by Hans Rosling, is a very good one as well. And thank you, Ruth, for the comment regarding going for a walk and having a call with a friend. So all these things to help take water out of the bucket. Craig, we're pretty much up for time. In fact, we've gone over time, but it's been such an interesting conversation that I've allowed it to go over time quite happily. So we'll start to wrap up. I know we've got some resources that we're going to share at the bottom of the screen. I want to kind of say thank you to everybody who has tuned in for the last 40 or so minutes today. We appreciate it's a lovely day outside for most people, and appreciate your time and attention here. And I hope that it's really been of benefit. We're more aware now than ever of the need to support and be supported when it comes to mental well-being. And I love that quote, or that phrase that you used earlier on. I think that one's a really important one, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. We put that up on the screen. I think that's a really nice phrase to take away. So there's some great resources that you've actually mentioned, and we put them up on the screen a little bit earlier, but there's mind.org.uk and the NHS UK mental health support that you mentioned right at the very start of the conversation, and of course mental health at work.org as well. So Craig, thank you very much for really taking the time today to share your experiences, your thoughts, your recommendations with everybody. I really hope it's been valuable. Certainly I've taken a lot from it. how can people contact you? Well, I know the answer. We're going to put it on the screen below. I have an additional question. Is your blog the businessmentalwellbeing.com?
It is, yeah. So
blog.
Everything is on that. In fact, there's even a video about the bucket and things like that. So
yeah,
there's quite a few resources. But again, I urge anyone who is having an issue or struggling, and just needs to put it out there somewhere. The email's there. I will respond to as much as I possibly can. And businesses out there who are just sort of interested in how it is that they might be able to sort of change that culture or sort of improve even 5-10%. I'm at the end of a phone. I don't leave my house that often these days.
Very good. Well, I'll send a pasty around for lunch and just leave a £5 sellotape to the door.
Sounds perfect
for me. And Craig, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. We've got a couple more recommendations for a book, which I'm going to put up now. So love yourself like your life depends on it. That's one for everybody. Again, Factfulness, and James recommends we all go out and grow some veg. And he assures me it's not too late to put some seeds in the ground. So get that veg in. Thanks very much, Craig. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Go and have some nice lunch, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care.